Well, as we're letting everybody in, I want to thank you all for joining us this morning for our High School Matters January edition. Happy New Year, everyone. And as we get into the 2023 end of our school year and thinking about that 23-24 school year, we're excited to bring a High School Matters that is actually something you don't have to think that far ahead for, because Esports, while we had our big fall conference at Oakland University and we named some state champions, actually has 2 seasons. And we are excited to bring an incredible team of experts onto this morning's webinar to talk about how esports is an incredible tool to not only build culture in your building, but unlock potential, because esports, unlike a lot of other activities, is something that's going to target a pretty unique group of kids and really give you a chance to do some unique good in your school communities. My name is Tom Leitz. I am the Associate Director for Training and Development for MASSP, former principal at Utica High School and the Utica Academy for International Studies. And this was something that I regrettably didn't bring to Utica High School before I left. We were getting that started, and I'm hoping it goes, because I started listening to what Ryan and Maggie and folks like Steve and Jennifer, who are on here, were talking about with their schools and with the programs they were seeing, and thought this is an incredible opportunity. So when we started the High School Matters webinars, one of the important topics we wanted to make sure we brought up was this one, because a number of principals in Macomb County, where I was a principal, were asking me questions about what I knew and how they could bring one of these programs to their schools. And I wanted to make sure that we brought experts to the table, because I didn't have those answers and wish I did. And now, after seeing it in process and learning about it, man, is it really, really exciting. I went to a lot of high school football games, a lot of high school basketball games. I was a nerd king myself as a former debate and forensics coach in high school, and I've seen a lot of kids excited about a lot of stuff. Being at an esports state championship was pretty awesome, because you saw kids from every different dynamic, every socioeconomic status, race, gender, etc., all interacting, having a blast, and celebrating each other. Like the same kind of fanfare that I saw at a football game was happening at Oakland University with a bunch of kids playing like Rocket League, which, by the way, Ryan, you ruined my 8-year-old son, who now only plays Rocket League all the time. So without further ado, I want to introduce our panelists. We have the Esports Dream Team on this morning. And on the screen, you see some faces. You see them in who's in the meeting as well. You'll see their faces up there. But I put not only their names and their titles, but also their Twitter handles, because each of these incredible leaders in the esports world tend to share a lot of information about esports all year long. So we have Ryan Casey, Director of Esports at Missile, and MASSP Director of Digital Content, Maggie Helmer, who is the Assistant Director for Esports, Steve Forsberg, Assistant Principal at Ludington High School, a very early adopter in esports. I think Steve maybe coached a little bit along the way and did a lot of stuff with that. And the one and only Jennifer Bustard, Mona Shores High School Principal, and probably the greatest cheerleader for schools in the state of Michigan. Steve, that's not a dig on you. You're pretty awesome, but Jennifer does it in a way that I only wish I could have when I was there. So what I'd like to do first, though, is turn this over to Ryan and Maggie to do a little bit of like a 20,000-foot overview of what esports is and how you can begin that building programs and unlocking that potential. So Ryan and Maggie, if you want to take over, let me know when I need to click.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom, for having us on today. We're excited to share and learn with everyone else today. Maggie and I are kind of the duo that runs the Michigan High School Esports League for our state. And this is something that we've learned a ton about. We were not like gamers that were hired to help do this. I'm a former principal myself over at Croswell Lexington High School and at Ubley Junior Senior High, both over in the Thumb area on the east side of the state. But I am passionate about student opportunities. I was into athletics and all the nerd stuff too. Like Tom said, I did band, I did sports, I did science research competitions, all sorts of things. So I really just love all the different aspects of being able to get kids involved and to get them connected with their school community. And absolutely, without a doubt, esports does that. So Maggie and I will kind of tag team back and forth a little bit here as we kind of run through some slides, just some kind of overview information, general benefits, talking about some of the some of the things that we still are trying to dig away at, some of the can't think of the correct word here, but there's a lot of things out there about esports that maybe isn't true. So we just want to touch base on some of those types of things, and then we'll dive in and let the experts also talk from Mona Shores and Ludington about their experiences, and we'll just chime in along the way. But if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide, Tom. This is Maggie and I's favorite statistic that we get to share anytime we do a presentation or a breakout. We're meeting with principals or school board members or athletic directors. About 45% of kids who are in esports have never been involved in any other extracurricular activity before. So not just, oh, they don't play volleyball or football. They don't do band or art club or debate or theater. Like, they have not been involved in anything. So if you have almost half of your student body that'll get involved in this at some point, that's going to be them. So to have those kids being able to put on your school colors or wear a shirt that has your mascot on it. Eventually, we try and encourage schools to treat this and, try and pour energy into this like you would your basketball team, where they get a jersey. Yes, there are esports jerseys, believe it or not. And they get to have that sense of pride that all of your other students that are involved in different extracurricular clubs and teams get to have. And so that's generally a pretty good eye-opening stat, and that's why we like to start with it there.
Ryan, I'm a little disappointed you and Maggie don't have your jerseys on this morning. So
I have, dang, now you said that, you're right. We do have jerseys, and they are pretty sweet. We're rocking the new logo wear here, but missed opportunity. You're correct. Maggie, you want to take it? Yep, go ahead.
Yep. So in one of our partner that we work with, our platform partner, wow, say that 5 times fast, is Play Versus, and they conduct surveys. And one of the surveys that they did resulted in showing improvements in students. And some of those are huge statistics that I was absolutely taken aback by. Like, I knew that we had huge improvements in a variety of areas, but just to see these numbers, improvements in 91% in socialization, 83 in communication, 78 leadership and mental health and sportsmanship. All of these are huge soft skills that that the students benefit from when they are part of an esports team. I'm sure that Jennifer and Steve can attest to seeing some of this firsthand. But these were just some numbers that I thought were kind of shocking for somebody that I've been doing this for 3 years. And yes, I've seen this firsthand, but to see the numbers on the screen is a whole nother ball game. So just something to share, because a lot of these students have never been involved on a team. They might be playing games and, interacting with their friends online at home, but to put them in a team setting and building those soft skills of communication and, okay, yeah, we can't smack talk to the other team and everything like that. Like, trying to build all of that is huge. And to see those improvements is absolutely amazing.
So Maggie, I know I said I was going to let you guys go, and I'm a terrible host. I want to first remind participants that if you have questions along the way, we want this to be very conversational. So if you're like, hey, talk to us about that slide a little more and what it is, that's great. And as we get into some different sections about building those programs, we want to do this. But I want to take a second to maybe ask Jennifer and Steve, as principals who have active programs. We talked about that last slide that said 45% of the students involved haven't participated in anything else. Then we pair that with this next slide that talks about the improvements in socialization, which I have to imagine is a part of the reason that some of those kids are not getting involved in those in other activities. Can you two talk about maybe, an example, or in general terms, like not with names, obviously, but how you've seen that manifest itself in your communities?
Well, Tom, and Maggie, you are exactly right. The benefits as far as the soft skills are amazing. Just this last spring, we graduated a young man from high school. And quite frankly, if esports was not in his life. It was the thing that he came to school for, and he would not have received his diploma if it wasn't for Coach Strosky and the esports connection that he had to school, because he wanted to go to practice, he wanted to compete, and he wanted to be there. So it was just a motivator. And then when he learned that, hey, I'm pretty smart, and hey, I could go to college, and hey, I want to be an engineer. He actually enrolled in our junior college this fall and is doing really well. So it's not just the small soft skills, it's, life-changing for sure.
That's awesome. Thanks, Jen.
Yeah, I just echo that. I can think of anecdotally, we've got a young lady who's a senior this year, has never been involved in anything in her life here at school with us, gets special education services, but just and she was on our team. She competed. She earned her varsity letter. We actually allow students who attain a certain level to earn a varsity letter. And her mom, some of the side conversations we've had, at a fundraiser, she took a leadership role and actually ran a station. I mean, things that her mom's never seen her be able to do. And on top of that, stories like Jen said, where we've got my assistant coach right now is a alumni who was on our founding team. She's at the local community college, and now she's back for the second year as my assistant. So just to see some of those legacy pieces too. And there's tons more stories. And I think if nothing else, kids opportunities to be part of something like this and grow some of these skills as leaders. It's just been a great addition for us at Ludington.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Steve. And I'll echo that sentiment in that when I was at the Oakland University Esports conference and championships, it turned out that one of my former students, despite not even having an esports team, was not only doing a session for us there, but was one of Oakland University's players, and now is returning to coach with them while he works on an computer engineering master's program. So like that's the impact that this had. And this was a kid I didn't know, and I knew a lot of my kids. I mean, I was in a bigger school, but I had a lot of relationships and missed a chunk of kids that were there. So sorry to interrupt that one, but I thought the combination of those two slides was too ripe of territory not to go to. So I'll click forward for you, Maggie.
No problem. Thank you for sharing, everybody. And I'll hand this back over to Ryan.
Yeah, so you see some of that data from that survey and you're thinking, wow, that's really awesome, all these improvements. But I think it also challenges some of those misconceptions that a lot of us might have, or maybe parents might have, right? Because we think about esports, we think about video games, which are recreational, right? You're thinking about the kid playing video games till 3 a.m, pounding Monster energy drinks, in their room or in the basement, because that's kind of where they're at doing their thing. And that is true. That's what video games is, and it's for personal enjoyment, right? Esports is different. Yes, it's a video game, but it's competitive. It's structured. It's team-based. There's so much reliance on communication and strategy that goes along with it, and so it's hard to understand if you don't see it. And if we have time, I have a video I'll play from our championships from last spring. We're not done with the fall video yet, but as Tom and Steve mentioned and Jen mentioned, who are all at the in-person event that we did, when you see it, you get it. For me, it's kind of like robotics. Back when I was a high school principal, I saw the kids tinkering on the robot, doing their thing, and didn't really get it. Then I went to a first robotics competition for the first time, and I said, oh, I totally get it now, right? So and hopefully when you see it, that'll help support some of those statistics that you already that we just talked about. So we can go to next slide, Tom. I've got to remember to update this because we're in 2023 now, and so we're actually, if you look at the trend of the graph here, the amount of revenue for video games is actually surpassing $200 billion this year. $200 billion. So your kids are playing games. They're already playing games. They're already playing the games that we offer in the league. It's a matter of how do we hone in on that engagement so it's productive and gets them involved in a safe environment at our school where we can have some of that structured, safe competition. Do you want to talk about the next couple here kind of briefly, Maggie?
Yep. So I just wanted to put, these words down and put the benefits of how esports connects in education, as well as the life skills that students gain from esports. So for instance, you get kids that like we were talking about that haven't been involved in anything in their school, and then find something in a community and find a space that they want to be involved in. Well, that means that they want to do well in school so that they can be at practice and be at the games and participate in their esports team. So then you look at, you have scholastic improvement, you have student achievement and student engagement. All of that comes just by giving them a safe space where they can connect with other students with like interests. There are a lot of STEM skills that come with esports, as well as there are a variety of scholarships for colleges. Oh, sorry, back one time for me, please. Thank you. And a variety of careers, which we'll hop over to in just a minute. And obviously we talked about leadership and teamwork, as well as digital citizenship. And then you also have our life skills, which we've talked about with socialization. You've got communication. You also have conceptual thinking, where they're problem solving. You've got teams going up against teams. It's very similar to when you're at a basketball game or a football game or a volleyball game. You have to have strategy. And so they build all of that. And there's just a lot of different developments, and there's a ton of research behind the skills that they develop by doing this as a team. Go ahead to the next slide. And then these are just a few of the future career paths. They're basically in esports. You can think of you've got from marketing to being a professional gamer to overseeing a company to game design. There is a variety of different things that students can do. There's social media, as well as like broadcasting and shoutcasting, which we've talked about. So one of the other benefits of having an esports team is that your students, not only that are gamers, can be involved in your esports team, but there are other students that can be involved in esports that may not even play the games. And that also goes to the future career paths, and we go into the other benefits. So that hits part of this, and I'll hand it back over to Ryan.
Yeah, I'll just add too, obviously it's a $200 billion industry, right? So any type of career is available. So if a kid has a passion for video games and for esports, they can find any sort of career within that industry, because they still need, we saw on that list before, they still need people that are in finance, right? They still need sales managers and things like that. So ton of benefits. I don't want to take Steve's thunder because he usually talks about some of this stuff with what he's seen from that one female student that was on his team, but it is more inclusive. We say that because it's not gender specific. We try and even actually promote to have more females involved in esports because we don't see a ton, and that's a really cool option for them. Really, all ability levels are welcome. If they can use a mouse and/or keyboard or controller, then that is good enough. You do not have to be 6'3", 185 and run a 40 in under 5 seconds to be good at esports, right? And there are a lot of different roles. And the one we try to remind folks too is you're trying to think of possible coaches for this club, or directors, even, if you will, because they kind of act more like a director. They don't need to have prior knowledge. So, if I'm a volleyball coach, I'm thinking, man, I'm a new teacher. They asked me to coach volleyball. I got to start looking at volleyball drills and how do you bump and set and blah, blah, blah. The kids got this. They just need somebody to offer them a safe space that can help communicate league information, make sure they're being appropriate. The kids will come up with the strategy and the game plan, and the coaches will learn kind of along the way. And Steve will attest to that later on, I'm sure, in a little bit. Otherwise, just a couple more real basic slides, basic facts here, Tom, then I'm sure we can turn it over to the others. But Michigan High School Esports League is what Maggie and I run. So we are in our 3rd year of operation. We have a fall and a spring season. So we're gearing up for spring here in a couple of weeks. As you heard Steve mention earlier, we are a varsity level league. So the expectation is that students would earn a varsity letter. You can kind of dictate, obviously, locally what that looks like. Do they have to play in so many matches? Do they have to score so many points? And then we have 9 different game titles available, all extremely popular games, again, that your kids are already playing.
If I can ask a quick question of our principals in the room, I know there are other esports venues out there, but that don't necessarily have the varsity level and don't have the championship games and are just a little more loosely organized. I would imagine that the fact that there is a competition, that there's a championship and all that, how does that play into kids wanting to be a part of an esports team?
I can just tell you that from from the years that we've gone to the state championship, I mean, it's a cool event. I talk about it back here like when I used to go and watch the state championship basketball games at the Breslin Center. I mean, these are big time venues. There's teams and students from all around the state. It's the top, and it's a really big event. That's garnered a lot of interest and kind of a lot of credibility for our kids. I think it's nice for them. Part of this, like part of our motivation for continuing to do this and growing it is giving something that these kids are passionate about credibility, because like Ryan said, the gaming industry is a $200 billion a year industry. If we don't create pathways for our students who are passionate about that to access that industry and do it at a younger age, I think we're letting them down a little bit. And if you look at viewership around the world, I always mess this stat up, but Ryan or Maggie can help me. I think this past year, either the League of Legends, which is a game we play, or the Rocket League Championship surpassed the Super Bowl in worldwide viewership. So
is that a quality question about the last Super Bowl or about Rocket League success? Which
it could be a little bit of both, but I think it just shows like, hey, if we're not lending some legitimacy and creating a positive culture and community around students that want to do this at our schools, I think we're missing a little bit of an opportunity there. So,
and Steve, I love what you just said there, because I have an 8 and an 11-year-old at home, or about a 9 and 11-year-old. They're going to be both within the next month, and they play video games, particularly my boy, the 8-year-old, right? To Ryan's point that we have a lot more boys involved. And one of the things that blows my mind is he will sit around and watch other gamers play. And I'm like, how can this be exciting? But then I learned about shoutcasting and all the other parts of this and the strategy sessions they have. And I was like, so this could go one of two ways, right? Like this could be done out in the wild, wild west in the wilderness, or this could be done with some thoughtful adults who are making sure this is a positive learning environment, not something where kids are getting, potentially harassed, targeted, et cetera, things that we know are happening online. So, I love what you said about that this is not just about the coach being somebody who helps these kids do it, but it's really about that coach making sure that we're creating this positive educational environment that is the equivalent of what we expect of our varsity teams, of our school academic and athletic teams. So I appreciate that piece. Jen, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as the season kicks off, this is our second year, and the kids were hungry after their first year. They wanted to learn, they wanted to compete, they wanted to learn new strategies. And so they were very motivated by making the playoffs and wanting to get to the state level. And so, and competing and wearing a jersey in the hallways on Fridays and on game days. And one of the challenges I gave them, I said, all right, dudes, when you win your first match, I'm going to bring pizza to all of you guys. Well, sure enough, team 1 had their pizza, team 2 had their pizza. Next thing you know, I was broke because I was feeding kids about 6 different dinners of pizza. And so they were just motivated by, we're going to make the playoffs and we're going to go to state. And so it was just fun to watch them get hungry and compete, because you're right, the kids in that room are not a part of any athletic team in the building, and they get jerseys and they get to compete and they're motivated, and they're just fun to watch. Dave will tell me, hey, come down to my room. Do you hear that all the way down in your office? I mean, they're just roaring when they have a big play or, they won a match. So it's super cool to watch that.
It's awesome. Thank you. Ryan and Maggie, sorry I took over your talk.
You do not need to apologize, Tom. All right, I'm just going to touch on this slide just a little bit. We do work with a variety of different partners, as you can see. So we work so that our partner Play Versus has a partnership with NFHS so that we can actually offer the varsity letter through our league. And then we also work with professional teams, which is our Detroit Pistons professional gaming team, as well as we work with a variety of college and university teams and some other partners that are interested in being in the industry as well and supporting student athletes. So Ryan and I will fully admit that we aren't the experts. We rely on working with the best of the best, and these are the best of the best. And so these are the people that we work with and we learn from. And we also work and learn from our high school teams like Steve and Jen, who are absolutely amazing and have awesome programs that have started. So
last fall, we set a record. So we ended up with 56 schools in 187 teams competing all across the state. So we had teams in the UP taking on teams from, Metro Detroit and Mackinac Island competing against schools on the west side. So it was really cool to see because other than our championship, there is no transportation needs, right? There's no refs. So usually when I try and talk to athletic directors about this, they immediately are like, I don't need another thing that I have to be in charge of, please. And it's like, but there's no refs, there's no custodian that you have to clean up, you have to manage, there's no busing. And then once you get past that, it's like, we just need you to high five kids and report their score in the announcements like, hey, Ludington beat Dakota last night in League of Legends. All right, and then high five the kid at lunch when you see him. That's all we're asking you to do. So, but it is growing. We're going to break that record. This number right here, we will break that this spring. The goal is to get to 75 schools, 200 teams, and then next year get to 100 schools. So, we're slowly starting to grow, and you'll see it, I think, on the next slide, Tom, I think is the heat map there. So you can see we're kind of spreading a lot over there on the east side and in Southeast Michigan, but we are growing to the west side, Northern Michigan, again, to the UP as well. There's a whole list of schools there. So what we try and encourage people to do when they look at our heat map is to see, do you have a neighboring school on there somehow? Do you have your rival on there? Is there another school either within your county or your athletic league that you're involved in? Because we do have a lot of different referral programs, which I can talk about later, follow up if anybody has questions about that to get people on board. Or maybe you have a family member, maybe you have a friend that teaches in a nearby district, or your nephew or niece or whatever. So it is a kind of a cool way to see how it's spreading throughout the state. And there is spring season. We'll have a couple weeks of a preseason, 8 weeks of a regular season, and that'll take us to a couple weeks of a postseason playoff where we have the best of the best compete. And then the next slide are all of our important dates. So enrollment's open, and we will start a preseason at the very end of the month. And then our regular season will kick off on February 13th. Playoffs will take place right after everybody gets back from spring break. And this does accommodate for spring break. Every school gets like a bye week that you get to choose. And so you can choose if you're at the end of the March, like I am at my kid's school district, or you're the first part of April. Otherwise, we'll do our championship in person at Western Michigan University. So if anybody's on the west side of the state, Western took their little theater and they refabbed it into an awesome state-of-the-art esports arena with giant televisions, and it's amazing, absolutely amazing. So we're going to be at Western, go Broncos, and on the 29th.
And Ryan, I'm glad you said that, because one of the things that was eye-opening to me as I started learning more about esports was how many universities are really catering to this. I mean, the Grizz Den at Oakland University, the Western University. I know Ferris State, who's another one of the partners, is doing a lot, but that's not the limit, right? Like, my understanding is we've got universities all over the state that are in the nation that are now starting to build facilities. Think about, those amazing sports facilities. Now they're doing amazing esports facilities. Well, that's the level of interest for post-secondary institutions have on this.
So that's a great point. So we have 28, I think, college esports programs in the state. Michigan's a leader collegiately, actually, in the nation in esports. They're ahead of where we're at the high school level. So that's why, as Maggie mentioned, we should talk about our partners. Like, these people are awesome to work with. And as Tom just mentioned, Ferris State is building a brand new multi-million-dollar facility only for esports and esports video production for broadcasting. And so we're hopefully going to do something with them and get into that new space as well.
And I think it's important to see that there really is a connection to the university level in this. Like, this is not, when I first heard about this, I was like, it's not a sport, right? It's video game. I was not a gamer, very clearly. And then I saw it and I was like, all right, so maybe there's a competitive, but what's the end goal in this? And then I saw the scholarships and I was like, holy cow, like, what am I missing? Like, by not bringing this opportunity to my school, what am I preventing kids from gaining access to? And I used my student as an example, who ended up getting a scholarship in his third year at Oakland University playing, but probably could have had one out of the gate as a kid who was on a gaming team in there. I mean, we were talking at the esports final about there was a kid who was actually being recruited by multiple colleges, right? We usually think about that in terms of football players or basketball players, but legitimately, this is a vehicle and an avenue to get to post-secondary institutions. And that's definitely worth shouting to the rooftops, because when we combine that again with the type of kid that this encourages to come in and the skills, both hard skills, academic skills, and soft skills, interactive and communicative skills that it brings together, this is pretty good stuff. So what I want to do now is, and again, as I said earlier, I definitely want to encourage you, those of you who are on the webinar, to ask questions. But I want to start by just asking of our two principals who are on the call. One of the big questions I always get is, how do I get the adults on board, right? Like, how do you talk a Tom Leitz who's not a gamer, who finds this not a real activity, right? That was old Tom. New Tom's been reformed. I'm a reformed esporter. How do you get those folks on it? And what capacities do they need? Like, clearly this person has to be an expert gamer. They have to know all of the systems, all of the processes. They've got to be a tech guru. They've got to have like 15 years experience on each of these games. Talk to me about how wrong I am.
Tom, you're extremely wrong.
Love it.
Here at Mona Shores, Coach Dave Drosky really just loves kids, and he loves technology, and he loves the kids in a quirky way that have just not been connected with the school. And so I was watching students go into his classroom after school and just game. And he was trying to get an esports league going, and it just never flew. And so when I learned about esports through MASSP, I said to Dave, man, I think we're missing the boat. What do you think about this? We'll find the funding for you. You really don't need a whole lot of things. And he said, let's go. And the kids really teach themselves. And going into the year two, as they've learned more things, they're making connections with college coaches, and college coaches are getting on Google Meets and coaching them and giving them tips. And so the networking has just begun. But really, you don't need, he's not a gamer. Coach Drosky is not a gamer. His son is. In fact, he got his son to coach a session or a practice with the kids. So really, you just need to have a person who loves kids, and who loves the quirky kids, and who's interested in spending some time with kids. And that was how easy it was. And Dave was like, let's go. So.
Awesome. So Steve, you had the other end of this. Like, you actually started the program as the coach in the AP, right? So maybe talk about that one.
Yeah. I got interested after we had a presentation by Play Versus at an event through MASSP, and just hearing the opportunities for kids, I wanted to bring it here. I put my feelers out, and I didn't have a whole lot of staff jumping on board. We were actually still in the throes of the pandemic. The nice thing about esports was it was kind of bomb proof. Like, you couldn't disrupt us because we can do it remotely. We don't have to travel. There's not a lot of cost. And for me, I just said, all right, I'm going to coach it. I don't have a ton of extra time as an assistant principal, but it doesn't take a lot of time. We practice 3 days out of the week for 2 hours each day. We're a lot more flexible with kids. We share kids with the drama club, with robotics, with traditional sports. We got some kids that this is their only thing. But for me, like, I don't game. I haven't gamed since Mario Brothers 2 came out on like Nintendo back in the day. Like, I don't know anything. But you create a system where you empower kids. I've got kids that are captains that are more like player coaches. They know all the game knowledge. I don't have to know all 4 or 6 games we're playing. They know it. They get it. I empower them to coach each other up. And then I just, I'm a traditional athletics guy, so I know coaching. I know team building. So if you have anybody on your staff that's either a really good teachers make good coaches make good teachers. I firmly believe that. If you've got anybody that you know is great with kids and pretty good with organization and wants to create opportunities, and has a little bit of time, they would be great candidates for that. They don't need to have any game knowledge or any ability in any of this.
Yeah. So like I obviously alluded to, I was very, very wrong in my perception. So what did you guys, I mean, and maybe Ryan and Maggie, feel free to jump in as well. Like, what were some of the things you did to assure your coaches, like, of the support you had? I know, and maybe this is a question that neither of you can answer, but one of the questions I've also been asked a lot is, what about Schedule B? Like, are there opportunities to pay coaches for this? What are you doing to support building that professional capacity that way?
Yeah, so I'm trying to work on kind of collecting like a database, or trying to be able to put together a little FAQ on how that works. But I will say, just anecdotally, it's trending that way. Although what has started as a volunteer, maybe like, we're going to volunteer it, we're kind of starting small, let's see how this works. You've got 4 or 5 kids, but then it grows to, I've got 20 some kids and we are in my room 3-4 days out of the week. That's a basketball team. That's a JV basketball team, in my opinion, at that point, right? So you're seeing it trend that way, where they are getting some sort of stipend, or it's on a Schedule B payment, because they are seeing there's a lot of kids in here. They're here almost every day for a couple hours. They're doing additional things on the weekends and extra tournaments. They're making it to championships. So I don't have any hard numbers and figures, but I can just say from talking to folks, that's where it's trending. And we're at a time where they have
a little bit of a, is it kind of like a Field of Dreams thing going on? Like, if you build it, they will come. Like, are schools like starting it and then building the data to support kind of, hey, we are interacting, like, when it comes to bargaining, we're interacting with as many or more kids. We're interacting with kids that are more high risk and high need, and we're doing really incredible things. Like, are we seeing that kind of trend happening?
Yeah, I think I'll just jump in and say, from my experience, it's a little unique because I'm an administrator, but I'm also the coach. But our superintendent at the time was Jason Kennedy, who's now down at Fruitport, and he just saw the value in it. I think the other piece is, from an admin perspective, like, looking at that, if you've got someone who's passionate about it, who wants to be the coach, what does your player base look like? I mean, we've got like 25 to 30 kids that are playing every season. We're doing 6 minimum hours a week of practice. Like was said before, that's like a JV basketball team. That's like our Quiz Bowl team. Look at some other you have and see kind of where it's on par, and then talk with your staff. And if you've got the wiggle room to do it, I think it does make a difference to say, hey, we believe in this enough that we're going to incentivize the staff member who does this, because I've got 4 different teams running simultaneously every day we're in there. So essentially they're having to kind of run around with their hair on fire all the time, keeping track of, it'd be like coaching volleyball, basketball, golf, and baseball all at the same time, because these games are so vastly different and the rules are so different. So I think it does make sense to incentivize it however you think it makes sense. But it does depend, for me, it would depend on how many kids you got involved. If it's 6 kids, all right, that's a club, and we'll see if you can grow it. If out the gates they got 20, 30 kids that are interested, that's a whole nother commitment level.
Yeah. So Steve, without, part of what you said there, I think, can be a little scary to somebody looking to build a new coach. Like, I've got to coach basketball, volleyball, soccer, and swim at the same time in different places. And I think there's an expectation there in saying something like that there's a level of expertise. But I think what you're suggesting is there are different games. And so those kids are doing different things. But as the director, maybe I'll throw this over a little bit to Maggie and to Ryan a little bit. Like, my understanding is that the director responsibilities are not necessarily to be, like Jen said, you're not necessarily the expert in all things. But if I was looking for some concrete sorts of bullets of what the coach is going to do, first, in the chat, I shared a document that Jennifer shared with me from Coach Broski on his how-to get an esports team started. And there's some really good info there. But up on the screen is something that Maggie and Ryan have shared before that kind of talks to, hey, here's what you're doing. And we're not talking about being an expert in, you don't have to know all the plays. You don't have to know the strategy. You've got to be the adult in the room. Is that fair?
That is absolutely correct, Tom. So again, what we say is the esports coach, you're really just taking that director role and letting those student athletes take on some leadership roles, because they're the experts. They know the games, they know the information. So these are just very short bulleted points on some of the responsibilities that an esports coach needs to take on between, scheduling practices and working on tryouts, and then dealing with behavior, making sure that technology is working well, which again, one of the positives about Playversus is we've got resources for all of those pieces that you need with technology. So our platform partner Playversus does provide all of those guidelines and information so that you have that right at your fingertips. So
we'll share the slide deck later, but these are some of the things like Maggie's talking about. There are some resources that are in here. And if you need more detail on those, you can contact Maggie and Ryan, they'll get them to you, but they have like these ability to kind of consult with you, to help you with documentation, with tech needs, etc., even like coaches checklists and rules, etc. So there's a lot of resources out there. I guess what I want to make sure people hear is you don't have to build this thing from the ground up. Like it's already there. The kids are doing it, to Ryan's and Maggie's point from earlier on. But more than that, there are some organizational tools that allow you to make this very plug and play where you can do it. Is that a fair kind of I guess way to encapsulate it, Maggie?
Yep, 100%. Thank you for doing a quick summary of that. They have a huge resource center, a coach's specific resource center, how-to books, checklists, and everything.
And I'll add dedicated support, right? So this isn't like a volunteer league that's ran, by people after school and they have time. They have tech support on standby on match day. So when you're trying to get a game started and there's an issue, you have people there ready to help you walk through that. And they usually get things resolved in it's like 97 seconds or something like that's the time. So a lot of things to help support students and coaches.
Yeah,
Ryan, well, go ahead. And Steve, you can jump right in this because like you hit on the next topic, which is what about technology, and all that. So Steve, do you want me to go back, or is this where you're headed with that comment?
No, that's fine. I can tie them both together. I just say, not only the tech piece, but they've got mentor coaches as well. And that's what I got connected my first year was somebody out of Georgia there's some other states that over half of their schools are in a league and their athletic association actually runs the league. So I was connected with a coach, somewhere else, and they taught me how to do a bunch of stuff that I never knew. The other things that I needed, I either begged, borrow, or stole from Maggie and Ryan. And so like a lot of the things that might come with my name on them, I either stole from Playversus or from them at some point and made it my own. And that's kind of the goal, is to hopefully give schools, some things to get started. Technology, Playversus tells you, or actually, I don't understand any of it because it's like whitelist that and this link the other thing. But I sat down with our tech director when we got approved and I said, hey, this is the site. Can you read it and make sure it happens? And we've had no issues. The biggest thing is checking not only with your district, like if you're all on board and you want to make it happen, check with your district to make sure that you can get through your filter or your firewall. And also if some of you have a filter runs through the ESD, sometimes you have to get them involved as well, just to make sure you don't want to get to game day and there's some hang up where you got to forfeit because you're blocked on the internet or something. That's why though the 2 weeks of preseason at the beginning of the spring here are key. It's optional. You don't even have to play them. We usually play them as like knock the rust off, make sure there's no kinks, somebody didn't update the firewall and we're froze out or something. So those are some things, just tips I would say, use those games as almost a practice trial run for your kids, but also for your tech and your consoles and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll jump in here too, because, the IT people spend their whole day trying to lock all those things down. So sometimes you gotta butter them up with some cookies or some coffee or something, because like their whole world is like, no, we cannot access that stuff. And then you're asking them like, hey, I need you to open this up. But it can be done. As Steve said, you might have to work with the local RESA ISD. There are different management tools out there where it only doesn't open up until 3 o'clock every day, right? Or they do it locally. They have it set up locally in the room that you're in, the computer lab, where they can access it through an external, through a different server setup. So it takes some creative thought if you don't want it just to become wide open again, which we completely understand. But it can be done. And a lot of times we'll connect IT people from one district or ISD with another person, or with that Play Versus IT support professionals to help ensure that all gets figured out. Here's a list of just some tech stuff. Really, at the end of the day, if you have a device that can play the game, then you can compete. It's as simple as that. So whether it's a desktop, it doesn't matter if it's a Dell or a Alienware or whatever. You can do this on laptops. The only caveat I'll say is Chromebooks are not great. There's some extra steps and software that have to be installed that might require you to have an account for this or pay for that. It can be done, but we don't advise it. But otherwise, any sort of laptop, whether it's a credit recovery laptop that's used during the day, then you can use it after school. Desktops in your library or media center. And then we can also be played on consoles. And a lot of these games can be played on any device, believe it or not. And so sometimes we let kids bring in their own device and they'll check it in with their coach at the beginning of the day. We have principals go out and they'll buy these, sometimes used on Facebook Marketplace, or they'll buy new ones so kids can play on those. And so some of the games, for example, like Rocket League or some of the Nintendo games, you actually need one machine to play it. And then you can just have multiple controllers to that one machine. So it's not like every kid needs their own Nintendo Switch to play some of these games. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. There's a lot of different offers out there and discounts available where a lot of times we get new schools, we can hook them up with a free Nintendo Switch sometimes, and different promotions like that. So again, as people, if you become interested after this, you want to talk more, I could explain all those different options.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for talking about that, because I think one of the big concerns is I need all this stuff, or they heard us talking about these colleges building these state-of-the-art gaming rooms. What you really need is a computer or a console. You could hook it up to a TV in your media center or a projector or something like that for other people to watch. But at the end of the day, you just need the device, right? It doesn't, I mean, it can be wherever you are. So that was pretty cool to me. Yeah, right. That's awesome. So, I know the next couple slides, if Maggie, I don't know if you want to quickly go through just kind of the different games that are offered right now and where they are, or if you want to skip ahead on those. What do you want to do?
I would just say that we can skip ahead. If anybody has questions, they can obviously reach out to Ryan or I, but those are our game titles. We've got 9 different game titles. There's a variety of different players and the types of hardware that it takes to play them.
Yeah, I would have lost on all of those. So, and due to my kids single day. So maybe once you've figured out who your adult is, then you've got your tech stuff worked out. And as Ryan and Maggie and Steve have said, Play Versus and Missile will help you out with that. How do you go about building your team? So Steve and Jen, I'm throwing it back to my experts in the room. And again, if you're on the webinar and you have a question for these folks, please ask, interrupt us, unmute and ask the question. But what did you do to get this started? Was it like, hey, we have an esports team and there were 100 kids there? Or was it a slow and steady? And maybe what have some of the other principals you work with or other coaches, what have you learned and garnered about how to get this going?
I got a survey that I think I stole from Ryan and Maggie, and kind of it's a Google form, and I just changed it a little bit. I put it out to our kids, and we had 40 kids 50 kids that said, yeah, we want to do this. Now, of those 50, 30 ended up shaking out and actually being on the team that season, but that was pretty big. And, over here in Ludington, we're a Class B school. We got 700 kids, just over 700. So we're not huge. So for us to get 50 kids to just jump on it and say, yes, I have interest, that's when we really knew it was a viable thing we wanted to look at. So that might even be a step that you could put somewhere earlier on, is hey, what's our student interest and does it make sense to really dive into this all the way? But it's kind of, once you do that, it's on. If you tell kids, hey, we're thinking about this thing, and you got 50 kids that want to do it, you kind of got to be ready to make it happen. So, but it was easy to get kids engaged.
Steve, to your point, I literally, I said it to a kid. I just said, hey, do you think there would be an interest in this in May of last year? And that was a dumb thing to do as a guy who was leaving my building. And I had about 10 to 15 kids a day for the last 3 weeks of school. Like, so we're starting an esports team. What do we need to do? And I kind of handed off to my my replacement. I was like, sorry, man, because you got some interest here, because it really was, it was that quick. So I created a monster that I wasn't ready to create. And that was a goof. So I think knowing what you're going to get into is probably important before you do it. Sorry to interrupt you. Jen, what about you? A similar story, different story? And you're muted. So yeah, there you go.
I would just say year one, it was put some things on daily announcements, and we had about 12, 15 kids show up just to kind of test the waters. We gave Coach Drosky a stipend for that year, and just started to feed the kids and give them pizza and give them rewards. And it's amazing how kids are motivated by food. And then when they were winning some games, it would be on the daily announcements. So this year, when he put the announcements out to get the season started, I mean, the floodgates came and there was 30 kids on day one for practice. So, and those 30 kids have sustained the entire time. So you just get the word out and bring a friend. Year one, year two, they all show up because they're hearing the great news about how fun it is every day after school, and all the incentives and what they get to do. So it was pretty easy sell. It's not a hard one at all to get kids to show up.
Yeah, the other thing I'd mention is I've had to be way more flexible than I ever was as like a traditional athletics coach. Like basketball coach, when I was in the gym, I'd say, hey, you missed practice, you might as well not show up tomorrow, like, or we're going to run your butt off, blah, blah. It was really hardcore like that. Here we've had to be a little more understanding because, like I said, we share kids with traditional sports, with other clubs. I've had to make it more of a feel like, hey, we are happy to see you anytime we can see you. We want you to be involved, but also for our varsity teams, those kids are competitive enough that they hold each other accountable. Like they say, hey, we got to be here for practice. We got to get better. We got to, and that kind of organically grew, but early on, and even still, we don't cut a kid because they got something else going on. I might just tell them, hey, that means you're probably not going to be on the varsity team. We got a JV team for you. Or we've got all these other roles. You can be a broadcaster. You can help with our stream. You can scout the other team and watch their stream and see what they do. You can be a manager. So we've created all these other roles too for kids to be involved, because a lot of them just want a place to be, and kind of they're still searching for their clan, so to speak. And a lot of them have found it here.
So Steve, I appreciate you bringing that part up, because I think, you talked or Ryan talked earlier about, he saw as a principal robotics and was like, this is pretty cool. And one of the unique parts about most robotics team is there's a fundraising team, there's the press, communications team, there's all this and maybe Jennifer, I don't know if you have a similar situation, but do you see that? It sounds like you see that evolution happening in this part. And in a minute, I'll ask Ryan to talk a little bit about shoutcasting and some of that's coming as we move forward. But what like are those roles very hard fixed? Are they the same kids? Do you see different groups of kids becoming a part of the team? Like, because I see that as a real opportunity to tap into different strengths. I always felt like it was one of the best parts about robotics and First Robotics was that there was almost a mandate that you had those different parts to your team to get going. Do you guys see that in the esports development, Jen?
Yeah, Tom, I would share that one of our students who came to the conference sat shoulder to shoulder with Ferris, who was streaming the event, and was just blown away at the fact that you could do this as a career and you can go to college and be in production. And so next season, this spring season, we will be streaming live all of our matches. And so he'll be the commentator, he'll be the producer of the live streaming. And so we're super excited for him. He's a student who didn't find his niche in school, wasn't sure what he wanted to do after graduation. So we're super excited for Michael. And we know that that's going to be a great learning curve for him, but we'll be live streaming our matches for our viewers. So it'll be kind of fun.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Hey, Ryan, maybe this is a great time to talk about like what's coming and shoutcasting and that part of this whole thing.
Absolutely. So we've got, as I mentioned, beyond just kind of our regular league stuff, we do try to offer some additional events. We just started doing that this year, where we are running some additional kind of just fun tournaments, because these kids love this and they are willing to travel to do it if parents want to help chaperone or take them to different tournaments and things. So we have a tournament set up on the east side of the state at Divine Child High School for Smash Brothers. We have a tournament set up for the west side of the state at Grand Valley State University, and then in which kids who participate in that one will actually get a ticket to go to a Grand Rapids Griffins hockey game that night as well. So those will be fun. And then the big thing we're working on for next year is to create a statewide shoutcasting competition. So again, kind of this play-by-play commentary is a huge part of esports. Not just the people that get it, but it's super helpful for the people who don't understand it sometimes. So for the adults in the room that are watching. And so we're trying to put together a competition in which students can compete from all across the state. And they'll either maybe at first record their broadcast, their shoutcast against some sort of gameplay. Then we have a panel of experts in the area that'll review and critique and provide feedback on those, and kind of the best of the best. We'll kind of do a final competition at a site to be determined for a championship prize, probably some sort of scholarship award for the winning student or students, because it's probably really is a team approach to doing that. And so we're really excited to do that, but we kind of see that in the same as Tom kind of alluded to, as the statewide forensic competition, or maybe you might see through DECA or BPA and those other types of organizations try to do something similar. So a lot of cool things in the works. We continue to do stuff with the Detroit Pistons. The Detroit Lions want to work with us and do some cool things, whether it be at LCA or with the Motor City Cruise or at Ford Field. So just we're not going to slow down anytime soon. I think we're just going to keep doing more and more and more to keep providing students opportunities to compete and engage and have fun.
And maybe partnering with that is, if I understand correctly, there's also opportunities for this to start expanding down into the middle levels, right? So that's one of the things I know Maggie's been working on, along with Ryan and Nina. So that's when does that opportunity manifest itself?
As of right now, they just got done doing like a pilot group this last fall, working with, I think, 10 or 11 different middle schools. And I think we're putting on some webinars right now to roll this out a little later into semester 2. So really, it's more, think of it more of a club model, and it comes with a curriculum. So whether you meet once a week, twice a week after school for an hour, and it's really up to the schools, however they want to do that. But there are some kind of turnkey curriculum, slide decks and resources and activities and handouts for club advisors and students to go through. And then towards the end of that club model experience, middle schools would be able to scrimmage each other. So maybe you kind of do it in-house for a while, and then towards the last couple of weeks of the semester, you'd be able to scrimmage on middle school age-appropriate games. And so this is something that Nina Davis, who's our Associate Director of Middle Level and former middle school principal at Lance Cruz Middle School East, is taking on, and Maggie's assisting her with that as well. So that's our MHSEL prep, we call it. And if you go to the MASSP.com website and you go to events, we have some of those webinars listed up there for middle school folks to learn kind of what's that, what that's all about. And I will say this, as popular as esports is at the high school level, it is insane at the middle school level, because middle schools just cannot offer as many extracurricular activities as high schools can. So they are just begging for different after school programs, and middle school esports is going to be huge.
Build that pipeline, right? So get your kids ready to go.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Are there any questions from our audience? I know I've asked a couple times, you're welcome to interrupt, et cetera, but any questions for our panelists on how they might be able to help you think through this?
Yeah, my athletic director is this Romeo from Alpena. My athletic director is going to be starting this up. He signed everything off. We're looking forward to getting started with this. What was your initial startup costs in terms of equipment? And did that come out of athletic funds, grants? What was your role? I just redid a media center and made it into a student union. So we kind of equipped it like that. But I'm picturing like 8 80-inch monitors across a wall with, and I'm not really sure, I kind of got my brain set. I'm trying to keep an open student union, but I'm just trying to think of money and where those funds came from. So I appreciate any input.
I'll let maybe Steve or Jen answer this. The only thing I will say is we do see a lot of people. I mean, obviously, if somebody wants to go through and they want to have like a dedicated esports space, great, with dedicated machines. But I think as you'll hear from Jen and Steve is anything that you can use that is multi-use, right? It gets used during the day for one activity and then it's available after school for esports and vice versa is a pretty safe route to go because then you can kind of spread that cost, into different budgets and things. But I'll let them talk a little bit about maybe some initial costs or maybe what funds they use to pay for it.
So at Mona Shores, we used our current after-school credit recovery classroom. So there was already 12 computers in there. And to start off with, some of the kids were bringing their own gear in. And that was kind of problematic because it didn't mesh with the system. But that's what they did for practices. We have made the pledge in the year 2 to really fully commit. We've used tech millage community funds to support. We just renovated the classroom and launched it last night. So we've invested about $60,000 into computers, chairs, tables. So we're really invested for the future. But year 1, it was computers that already existed in the building, and you can do it that way for sure. It just depends on how big you want to do it.
Yeah, Romeo, I think that's a good question. Welcome. I'm glad you guys are going to get involved. We were able to we were looking at purchasing some credit recovery laptops with ESSER funds to kind of address learning loss. So we also, when we purchased those, made sure that they'd be up to snuff to game on. And so we double dip with them as well. So I think you'll find a lot of schools that do that. Right now it's trending more towards the Nintendo games though. So we were able to get one of those free switches through PlayVersus, and Ryan and Maggie helped connect us with that. And that's actually a little more economical way to go. Like the laptops are about $1,000 a piece, I think, when we priced them out a few years ago. I think for a Switch bundle, it's like, I don't know, $400 or $500. And a lot of your kids that play those games probably already have them, and that's a little easier to connect with whatever you've got. You could put it up on those screens you're talking about. It's just making sure your tech folks work with them to make sure their machines, like their console, can connect to your internet, but do it in a safe way. Like we do the 3 to 5 only in that room, and I'm always in there with them. So our tech department's really comfortable with them using their personal.
That's way cool because we have a pretty robust CTE program, and our business professionals are one of our CTE PPA people want to get this up and running. They're all geeked to go out running it, and they have the equipment because it's all CTE units, all laptops versus Chromebooks. And so my AD is saying, hold tight, we need to get everything going. So I'm trying to figure out, is it going to be out of his funds? Is it going to be, because we can use their equipment and it'd be perfect, but I can see this just growing leaps and bounds fast as soon as it goes.
That's a great question. Thanks, Romeo. Appreciate it. And thank you all for the answers. Anybody else have any questions as we're wrapping this up?
Yeah, hi, my name is Keith Marzak. I'm the athletic director and assistant principal. And I was one of those ADs, hold on, whoa, I don't want any more to take on. But myself and 2 staff members, we actually were at the conference at Oakland, and we sat in Steve's session. We have 2 computer labs that connect to each other with Promethean boards. I have support from our district. I guess my question is, what next? What's my next step? What do we do to get this going?
I would start. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
I was just gonna say, good to see you again. I was gonna plug Ryan and Maggie there. I'd say, hey, reach out, connect with them, steal some of the stuff. Have you guys already found it? You got a survey out to kids? You know how many kids you're dealing with, you think?
I don't. I was going to use the one you shared, but we're a school of about 1,200 kids, and I'm envisioning, because we have like we have a couple after school programs like board games and like not necessarily Dungeons and Dragons, but we have like some type of. I think there's going to be a very large interest in esports.
Yeah, I think if you figure out how many kids you're dealing with, and then I think just to imagine, like some of the info that Ryan and Maggie can share with you is, basically competition is Tuesday, Wednesday. How many days are you going to ask the kids to come in? We only do that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. figure out what's doable for the folks that are going to be your adults doing it and what makes sense for the kids. It sounds like you got a space and some hardware. And I think the other piece is just some of those tech tips they shared, making sure like snag a kid or two that you think is going to be a captain and try to play with just a couple of kids after school one day and make sure, work the kinks out. But then I'd say connect with Ryan and Maggie and talk about what are some of the key dates coming up and how are you going to on-ramp to the season?
And
Absolutely.
just as a note, we have some early bird pricing that is open until January 17th. So if you haven't signed up, I would like to connect with you and get you on a consultation call with our partner Play Versus so that we can get you signed up and at a discounted rate prior to the season start and get that rolling for you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and we do have we'll have like a new coaches webinar coming up in a couple of weeks. So that'll be a good opportunity to get the people who are going to be coaching on that call with some of our super coaches to kind of walk them through tryouts if they're going to do it, kind of how to schedule their practices if they're going to do it, like, some of those things. But like Steve said, number one, find your interest of kids based on the number of kids. How many adults are you going to try and have support that? Try and come up with what you think that schedule, what kind of games do you think they're going to be interested in? And we have a 101 webinar that gets into even more specifics than what we talked about today. A lot of it's similar. We just dive into specifics. That's tomorrow, but we also have a recording that you can share with maybe some of the prospective coaches you're thinking of. And then, that new coaches meeting will be coming up in a couple of weeks. So that's what I would start with, would be that survey.
Do you think this is too short of time frame to start in the spring, or is this something we should try to work things out and shoot for fall?
I think you can do it. It's just a matter of how big you want to be. If you have 80 kids wanting to do it, you might go, but you could start small or, kind of figure out the schedule. Like, we're only going to do this one or these two games. But honestly, because we don't start till middle of February, you're going to have a couple of weeks to get all the tech things worked out. Like Steve mentioned, really taking advantage of that preseason. There's also an option where you can just scrimmage on every Monday and Friday in the system for free. Like, you can just scrimmage people, and that's another way to work out kinks and give kids some playing time that maybe can't be fully committed, stuff like that. So
And Ryan, it's a fair statement to say too that I'm like thinking, I tend to think of things like in an athletic mindset, you need 3-4 weeks to get the teams going, get them up to speed. In this case, these kids are already playing the games, right? It's really just getting your technology and all that piece in there. They're already going and making sure that works, right? And that's why I think you can get up to speed on this one. And that was one of the things that was really appealing to me. I was like, this is awesome. Like, it's pretty plug and play because the kids do it all. I just need the adult and the space and a little technology, and it goes a long way.
You got it.
Well, that's awesome. So I want to thank those of you who hung around afterwards for some questions. If there are more, I put Maggie's email in the chat. I also put the link to the 101 webinar that's coming up. So if you have a coach or somebody that you want to register for that, it's there. We want to thank you for joining the High School Matters session today. Our next one on February 10th is going to be on communication competencies for principals. And I'm really, really excited. We got a good panel of folks that are in the field as far as in crisis communication, as well as some folks in the school level. And so we're really, really excited to talk about some of those competencies. So very much a gear shift from this one, a little more fun, that one a whole lot more serious, and about how we can perfect our practice in that. So thanks to Maggie, to Ryan, to Jen, and Steve for their work today. And we really appreciate everybody coming. So if there are more questions, you can always reach out to us. We're happy to answer them. And we really appreciate you being here this morning. Thanks, everyone.